This is essentially the same program we've seen in the other while examples. I've just expanded it a bit to show some style issues and how a program like this perhaps should look, rather than the very simplified one we had in the initial programs, which had a number of style issues. So first of all, as you can see, it's a bit longer. I've also put a comment at the top explaining what the program does. So it's just simply a statement saying it computes the time required to double an investment, and it uses a loop, etc., etc. You perhaps wouldn't want to put quite this much information in an actual program, but I'm trying to explain things as clearly as possible here. We've got a block of variables that we've introduced here. The first one is the interest rate. This is a final variable because we're not going to change it once we set it. And notice that unlike the previous examples, I haven't written this as 0.02. I've written it as 2.0, representing 2%, which is perhaps a more natural way to write it. Now, to convert a percentage value into an actual real interest rate, we've got to divide it by 100, but we'll do that later on. We've got an initial balance here of, in this case, 10,000. For both these variables, we put a comment on the end of the line, and we've lined them up with each other using tab characters, saying what they essentially represent. We've got another final variable here representing the actual final target we want, which is set to be equal to the balance times 2, i.e. we want to double our amount. I'm kind of assuming that target is pretty obvious, and so I haven't bothered commenting this, and also year is pretty obvious too. Then there's the first block of the actual logic of the code. This is a while loop. Again, I've put a comment in front of this saying broadly what this block of code does, and it's split up into a few more lines here. So we've got the while loop while the balance is less than the target. Okay, the balance is going to change, the target is going to be fixed. And then we've got another variable in here which computes the amount of interest we're going to be adding on each year. So we're taking the interest rate and we're dividing it by 100, and then we're multiplying that by the balance. That gives us the amount of interest to add on. And on the line below here, balance plus equals interest, we add on the interest to the balance to increase it. Notice that this variable interest is only used inside here, and because of that I've only declared it inside here. So I could have put this declaration of this up here, double interest, not assigning it to a value initially, and then just written interest equals balance times rate divided by 100, but I'm only using it inside this loop, so I'm going to declare it inside this loop. Finally, each time we go around the loop, we're going to print out how much money we have so far and how many years there have been. This is perhaps more debugging code, and this is something you might want to comment out once you know your program's working. And then finally down here we've got another comment explaining what this block of code does, and we have here the print statement, which basically prints out the investment doubled after years, and so I've kind of like entered into the middle of this statement the actual number of years it's going to be, and we could probably put this all on one line because it would still be shorter than this line, but I've done it separately to illustrate that you can split lines if they get too long. In fact, normally I'd indent something like that 2 tabs to show that it's actually just part of the line above that's been broken here. You can't break a string like this part way through, but at one of these plus operators or anything else, you can split them over multiple lines. In general, if we click over here, we can see that this is, it says down here, column 80. Sort of 80 to maximum 100-ish columns is the most you want. Don't write very, very, very long lines. I know quite often people have extremely big screens on particularly desktops, but it does become a problem if you try and read these programs on either a smaller screen or in a smaller window as part of a development environment, so it's not good practice to do that. Okay, I'm not actually going to run this program because it does the same as the last one, but this is sort of the way you should write a program like this, with appropriate commenting, sensibly named variables, final variables, and splitting your lines and keeping them not too long.